In this episode, we discuss how Eze is going to get all the plaudits, but there's a secret recipe to his success because of Mikel Arteta. We also discuss throw-ins as they are the talk of the town. So instead of us guys talking about them, we brought in an ex-Liverpool throw-in coach to give you all the insight. And finally, we'll also discuss what can Spurs do to end this negative football, or is it the end of Thomas Frank potentially? Hello and welcome back to the Pythagoras in Boots podcast. We're just off the back of an Arsenal Spurs game. Omid's with me, Reese is with me, and a special guest, Thomas Gronemark, as Omid would like me to pronounce it. As always, before we hop into this, I've got a couple of questions for you guys to get you warmed up. The first question is, Eze is the fourth player to score a hat-trick in the Arsenal Spurs fixture. If you can name even one of the other guys, I'll be incredibly impressed. Reese, I'll let you have a first stab in the dark.
All I remember is while I was watching someone's name Sunderland came up. So I don't know if Sunderland is a relevant name. So I'm just going to go with that. I don't know what his first name is. I can't remember. I'm just going to go with that.
Paul Merson.
Paul Merson, okay. Thomas, would you like to hazard a guess?
Yeah, I don't know really who it is.
Honestly, Thomas, nobody's going to know who these guys are.
No, I really don't know, so sorry about that.
Good. So, Reese, just hazard a guess at the first name. Because I'll tell you the surname is correct, but because you guessed, I don't back that you know it is.
Can I have a letter at least?
No, you'll know straight away. December 1978, Mr. Sunderland did score a hat-trick in this fixture.
Eddie Sunderland.
Close, but it's actually Alan Sunderland scored a hat-trick in this fixture. Terry Dyson also scored a hat-trick in this fixture. And Ted Drake, of course, everyone remembers Ted Drake from the 1934 season. Outstanding footballer. Now you can actually have a guess. Which of these three players was a winger? So you've got Ted Drake, you've got Terry Dyson, and you've got Alan Sunderland. Which of these three guys sounds like a winger? Reese, if anyone at home got that correct, I have so much respect for you, because when I Googled it thinking there'll be like a name in there we potentially recognize. I feel like I remembered Harry Kane scoring a hat-trick in this fixture. Evidently not. Let's talk about the game that happened yesterday. Reese, let's pull up the stats from the game. Walk us through these, because the stats for Spurs look absolutely terrible in so many different ways.
I think the thing that stands out to me is field tilt. Utter domination by Arsenal. The whole game was played in Tottenham's defensive third. Tottenham really struggled to get out, and this is obviously a theme that we'll explore later. But yeah, generally speaking, look at the XG, look at the open play, and I think even from set pieces, like they were still generating XG, but it's the open play XG is so good for Arsenal. It's so criminal for Tottenham, 0.07.
They've got 3 of the bottom 8 XGs this season. I mean, obviously, one of them came against Chelsea. It was like 0.08 or something. So it's ridiculous. And they had another one as well. So it's not a good look, really.
We'll come back to Spurs, I think. Reece, do you want to touch on Arsenal's major winning point? Obviously, Eze scores a hat-trick, an outstanding hat-trick, by the way. But there were some other things that were happening.
Yeah, I think for me, I really want to look at Marino, because I think Marino played a really important role in this. Now, if we just look at how Arsenal built up play. So you've got Timber, you've got Saliba there, you've got Hincapi, who I'm sure Omid will touch upon later. But they usually set up in a back three in possession from the build-up phase. Now, as we can see, Calafiori was pushed up higher. So originally he moved into a left-back position, left wing-back, let's just say. And then he's come into central areas to create more bodies in midfield, create more passing options. And Zubimendi and Rice have created a double pivot in the build-up phase. Now look at Eze. At the moment, he's in a right-sided advanced midfield role, so right-sided cam. But this was pretty much a decoy starting position for the majority of the game. And what Arsenal's basically their philosophy was to get Eze into central areas and really slick interchanging out. Guess who's come out wide here? Marino. So Marino started from the number 9 position, but he's drifted out wide into the right inside half space. Where is Eze? Eze's moved into an attacking midfield position. Once again, different passage of play. Mikel Merino's pulled that into the wide area here to facilitate link-up play. Now, at this moment, you'd think, okay, number 9 is going to make a run in behind, stretch the play. What happens? Eze moves away from that right-sided attack. This is where Kevin De Bruyne would basically look to operate. Eze doesn't really want to go there because I'm sure Arsenal fans will attest that Eze hasn't really been that effective when he's in a wide right channel. That's not really his best position on the pitch. Usually it's when it's drifting out to the left or if he's in these number 10 spots. Now, the beauty of this number 10 area here is that Eze's got such great vision and feel for this area of the pitch. Now, he's in so many Tottenham bodies around him, yet he's got the vision to see that, you know what, I'm going to play a ball over the top here because all of these guys are sort of flat-footed. There's a lot of spacing behind them, relatively speaking, and he's got the sort of nuance in his passing to play that ball over the top. Flicks it over. Rice should have scored there.
Jed Spence tracking as well.
Yeah, sorry, Omid, you wanted to say something?
Jed Spence, he doesn't seem to be tracking his man. He did it with Trossard as well for the goal. He's playing an offside trap for the Trossard one. That one I can understand because I believe it was Udogie or Danzo that just kept everybody on side for the Trossard goal. But for that clip we just shown with Rice, why is he not just tracking Rice there? Rice is on the blind side of the rest of that back four. He's the only one that can see Rice's shirt number. So Jed Spence, as good as he is on these one-on-one situations, he needs to sometimes also be aware that he needs to mark the space, that the man's going to run into rather than just the man one-on-one on the ball.
Is that a similar issue that we saw with Wan-Bissaka? Because Wan-Bissaka was a player who was also very good one-on-one, but in terms of his spatial defending, that's where he struggled. As soon as someone started playing 1-2s around him, he didn't really know where he was.
I think there's a slight difference between them two. Is Wan-Bissaka used to not be aware where the space is for a through ball behind him, so not necessarily his man, but he did actually track runners relatively well when he saw them, if that was his man. Jed, I think, is the opposite. He's actually quite decent at closing off the space for through balls, but when it comes to a man running in behind him off the blind side, he just doesn't seem to pick them up.
I think this still you've got here is actually another good example of this. I don't know why Jed Spence isn't goal side of Trossard here, because if he was goal side, you could argue you might be playing him on side. It's really hard to tell from this visual. Either way, if Marino gets the ball here and plays it to Trossard, Jed Spence is doing what Wan-Bissaka may have done in previous seasons when he's at United, and you're always waiting to make a last-ditch tackle then. He can see his shirt, and I think the first thing you get told when you're a defender is if you can see the attacker's shirt, then you should be able to get goal side or even get a little bit closer. I don't think he can. I don't know what happens in the next bit of this sequence, but Trossard is in the advantage position. But generally on this Eze point, and I'm going to query you on this, Reece, because Spurs played with two in midfield, I saw this happen a lot where Eze's basically just sat in front of the centre-back, which is the centre-back's worst nightmare, that you've got a number 10, you can't really close down, because if you do, you leave space behind you. And if you let him go roam free, which Eze did, all three of his goals came from the exact same position, because the two midfielders were tasked with too much of a job, and then also Arsenal were dropping Marino in.
But I also don't get, from a Tottenham perspective, you've got guys like Pellegrini in the team. The whole reason why Pellegrini exists is to defend that space in front of your back four. He's meant to pick up that number 10 spot. And for him to sort of, what's he doing closing down Timber? What's Timber going to do on the ball? Like, your main threat is Eze. So as a defensive midfielder, I'm always going to be looking to scan who's the biggest threat. That's the person I'm going to try and take out the game. Why am I wasting my time pressing someone like Timber? Like, don't get me wrong, Timber's had a great season, but ultimately he's a facilitator. He's someone who's just going to help you retain the ball. He's not going to hurt you with the ball. So as we can see, Marino's dropped off. So Marino again, he's picked the ball up deep. Now, you just spoke about the centre backs hate it when say a number 10's in front of them, and they have to come out of position to confront that. But what's even worse is when you've got a false nine who's not even going to get into that body-to-body duel with you, and he's moved into that space. So Marino's come off the defense. Eze is now the most vertical sort of player. And Marino, this is a side of his game we haven't seen, the through ball into Trossard. Great goal. And that, for me, Marino deserves a lot of credit, but Arteta deserves a lot of credit, because that's purely he's tactically dismantled Spurs there. Another clip here. This is Eze's goal. Where's Marino? Deep again. Eze now, most vertical player again. And Eze, when you get him into this area of the pitch, he is devastating. Like, what he's got, like the likes of Bruno Fernandes don't have, in my opinion, is the ability to footwork. Like, he creates pockets for himself with elite level footwork. I mean, this goal, fantastic left foot finish. And again, another passage of play here where Marino picks it up as the centre forward, drops deep, plays in Trossard, Eze running beyond him. Marino's out of the picture, and Eze puts it in the back of the net. So Eze, for me, was absolutely just on another level. And if we just look at his touches in general, we can see that with Arsenal, he's been roaming across the pitch because he's playing on the left side, he's playing on the right side. He's almost more influential than he was at Palace in a sense, because at Palace he was playing predominantly down the left, whereas for Arsenal, he's playing across different sides of the pitch. I mean, this is him at Palace, very left-sided dominant player, if you can see in terms of his heat maps, and compare that back to the Arsenal graphic I just posted, a lot more influential across the final thirds.
We saw a Sunderland game against Arsenal just before the international break where Arsenal were terrorised by long throw-ins and generally set pieces. As a throw-in coach watching that game, what was your view on the game in general?
The goal in the 46th minute, that was 3-0 goal. It was actually Arsenal. It was not the best throw-in. We come into a pressure situation and one-on-one. It's acceptable pressure by Spurs, and then Spurs get it, but lose it immediately after good pressure in a good zone by Arsenal. And then we have the goal, like, I don't know, 8 seconds later or so. So throw-ins, yes, of course it's long throw-ins, but this is only a small part of how important throw-ins are. There are normally like 40 to 60 throw-ins in a match. So can you raise the chance of having success in every action, no matter if it's attacking or defending all around the pitch, then you can make a gigantic difference. I know the set piece statistics, expected goals by you, was, of course, all set pieces. But then when you look at Tottenham's average position during the game, and then 0 expected goals and set pieces, of course it's quite logical, because if your average,
you're not establishing territory.
So you have to be really, how can you say, lucky. Are you keeping the ball? You can have control, create a chance, score a goal. Are you losing the ball? Your opponents can do the opposite. And we saw this with 2 goals here, even though it was a bad throw-in from Spurs, Arsenal goal, then actually a bad throw-in from Arsenal, but we got it again after pressure, and then we scored. So throw-ins are at least as important as any other football actions. Yeah.
Anyway, Reece, as we said, we're gonna move to our very well-used board that you love to get across before we start speaking about Hincapié, Spurs' shape, and also some psychological factors. Walk us through what you've come up with here.
So this is just the average positions of Tottenham v Arsenal, and as we can see, Hincapié was barely troubled. Now, despite the fact that he's relatively inexperienced in an Arsenal shirt, for me it was surprising that a lot of Tottenham's attack was geared towards trying to exploit this side, which made no sense for me, because Timber and Saliba is such an established partnership. So why would you try and focus all your attack down that side, particularly when you've got Mohamed Kudus? You know, Mohamed Kudus operating in this space on the counter for me would have been a lot more smarter mode of attack, but instead he was tucked into central regions. Now, this was Arsenal's shape. As we can see, their game plan was pretty much to try and build up the play predominantly down the right side and then feed in the likes of Trossard into these spaces here in between the defense. But just back on Spurs, look at that shape. Now, we touched upon it in the dashboard, but it's horrific to look at from an attacking perspective, because Jed Spence is not providing the width. He's all the way back. Look at the space between Danso and Romero. This is where Trossard was able to get in between that big gap. And this is what they were looking to exploit. So even though you had a back three, it was quite spaced out back three, hence why there was balls being played through and over the top. What should have happened is, if they are going to go back 5, there should have been a more narrow back 5.
And well, it's interesting because they were working that on the pre-match, you know, when Sky Sports had the cameras and they were working on the line. They were all quite narrow and compact.
Yeah, but as we saw in that Y-Scout graphic, when we saw you spoke about Jed Spence and him sleeping with off-the-ball runs. If he takes that position that Nubaid said, instead of being here, if he's more proactive and limits the space, then that forces Arsenal to go out wide. And by forcing Arsenal to go out wide, you then, you know, you've got loads of bodies then in this area here. And yes, Marino's good in the air, but it puts a lot of emphasis on Marino then to be that impactful player.
So I was just going to say, I think like whenever a team plays a back 5, you would assume that they want the opposition to get the ball in wide areas and spam the box essentially. Like that's normally what happens with the back five. It's quite bizarre when a team plays a back five that the other team gets to play through the middle of them. I can't remember the last time I've seen that happen, which obviously comes down to shape, which obviously you've just discussed there. But I was just baffled.
Look at this gap there. So that run that Trossard makes splits that defense up because the gap is just too big from right centre back to left centre, and it doesn't make any sense because if you've done your tactics correctly and you've studied Arsenal correctly, you would know that Saka is more of a face-to-face, let me square up an Udogie type of player, right? So he's going to want to get the ball to feet. You know who is Arsenal's most vertical runner? Usually it's a Martinelli or usually it's a Trossard. So Arsenal, the way they play generally is that the left-sided winger is always going to be the inverted runner. So that means that you would want ideally your right centre-back to be tucked in close to the central centre-back to force that, and even the wing back here, to force this player to go here, because he's not going to be that effective from here, but he is going to be effective if you keep letting him run into that area there. Now, the other thing I just wanted to quickly touch upon, obviously we spoke about Eze before, but this is just an even more graphic interpretation, is look at Marino's average position, look at Eze's average position. So you'd expect the number 9 to be here, but instead Marino's average position was actually down the right side. It was Eze who was Arsenal's most central vertical player. And again, this was Arsenal's strategy pretty much throughout the game. Marino that's his starting position, would look to go out wide, and Eze would obviously start from here and go. So those two kept interchanging.
So we've seen Saka on the right wing. He's been tasked with so many different objectives throughout his tenure. I mean, I remember last season, Arsenal couldn't progress the ball forward and they dropped Saka to the halfway line because his back to goal play is just immense, like his upper body strength, insane. But this match is actually very interesting because he started really wide, and because he gets double marked, there's going to be more open space in the middle. And Arsenal have been so preoccupied with getting Saka into the half space because of his shooting, but they thought, you know what? If you saw Timber today, he did a load of underlaps. I don't think we've seen that before. So Saka actually starting really wide, opened up space in the middle. He almost took himself like, yeah, I'm probably not going to score or assist it, but it's going to be for the betterment of the team. And Timber was doing those underlaps. I think he assisted. Was it Eze for his first goal? Arsenal's second goal?
Yeah, that Timber passed across, wasn't it, into Eze?
Yeah. So Timber actually underlapping, and Saka's infield passing is actually very good. It's just that we've not seen much of it. But because of this new role that he was given, he was double marked out wide, and he had Marino infield, he had Eze infield, he had Timber infield and on the underlap. It just gave his passing game way more options. So I think it was really smart from Arteta, that small tweak.
Just quickly, you know what I think Tottenham should have done, right? So in terms of their midfield setup, I would have gone past, like, let's just say you got Palhinha. You should have pushed Palhinha into this pocket here. I would have gone 3 in midfield. So let's just say
it should have been Salah and Bergwall. I wouldn't even have Bentancur.
But let's just say you pick, say, a Bergwall there, get another midfielder in there. So now the spaces that you've given Arsenal are very limited. All right. Then I would have gone with 2 up tops. I would have had Kudus in this right-sided role. I would have, let's just say, an Odegaard down this side. Or Brendan Johnson or whatever. I would have not even gone with a 9. I would have set up with that 5-3 and then get 2 wing forwards that you can play the ball over the top into channels. And then that will, once that ball's gone over the top, then the team can come out and breathe. I think playing it into Richarlison and then getting your wingers so narrow just played into Arsenal because Arsenal just basically had to defend in a very tight area, just like this little area here. They didn't really have to be stretched out. Everything was so central. So it's very easy for them to defend.
I think that a lot of what we've spoken about there, while we're criticizing the defense, I personally feel like if you haven't got a plan to attack, eventually, if you haven't got world class defenders like Danzo who got caught out a couple of times and Jed Spencer got caught out a couple of times, you're waiting to lose, basically. I think if you're just asking your defenders, just sit in for 90 minutes, we're not going to be able to progress the ball to Richarlison. He's not going to get a touch of the ball. Your wingers are not going to give us any width, so we can't even play diagonal passes out. What you'd see, what would happen for Spurs is they'd win a challenge, and you'd look up, and then you've got a couple of problems. Neither of your midfielders are ball progressors, so you can't give it to either of those to drive you out of play, out of pressing situations, or play long diags to get you out. So you're giving it to Bentancur, and he's giving it straight back to you, and you've been sat there for 30 minutes waiting to get out. the ball's just gone out for a throw into Arsenal, or it's gone out for a free kick to Arsenal, or something like that. Arsenal have just got the ball back and it's going again and going again. And I just think as a defensive unit, you will just dial off at times. Like Danzo switches off for the Trossard goal. Like it's completely on him. But at the same time, I kind of feel sorry for him because I'm just kind of going, you've got no one in front of you for the entire duration of the game. You've got no one to pass it to for the entire duration of the game. So what they're essentially asking you is you have to defend and you have to find the solution for us to get out of these situations. I think overall, Spurs' plan was just wrong. The shape speaks to it. What we've mentioned psychologically speaks to it as well.
I just want to ask Thomas, because obviously you've worked with Thomas Frank. Obviously, there's been a criticism about the fact that does he have the attacking mindset to suit a Tottenham? Because obviously being at Brentford is a completely different expectation in terms of the style of football. You work with Thomas. I mean, we spoke to Albert Capellas, who'd worked with Thomas previously. He believed that Thomas does have it within him to play a more attacking brand of football, and that because he's a pragmatist, he's someone who adapts to whatever situation he's put in. Is this game the breaking point now? Does he have to now reflect upon what this expectation is from a Tottenham type team, and will he adjust, or do you see it potentially this just not being the right fit for him long term?
No, I think he's a fantastic coach. I'll also say, to be totally honest, I'm not a football coach, and I haven't even taken 1 minute of football education, and that might sound weird. So I'm just saying what I believe personal.
Of course, yeah.
So, but I think, to be honest, I've never been a fan of three in the back, because I've coached a lot of teams with three in the back, seen a lot of teams, and what I think in theory it works, and of course it's worked for some teams, but you're often +1 in the back there, and then when you go the other way, you want to transform that into offensive power, but that's for me often a challenge for many teams. So I think that it's really hard to be dominant with a back three. So again, let's see if he'll change his his strategy a little bit. And what do I mean with that? Because a lot of people might think, okay, he's going all in on set pieces, like setting every set piece up, even though many of them have a little reward. But you can actually do that combined with a really, how can you say, a beautiful playing style, and you can maybe say the same with a team like FC Midtjylland from Denmark, who are on one hand going all in on set pieces, on the other hand are playing really beautiful football from time to time. So again, if you ask me, it could also be good to see Tottenham play a little bit more, how can you say, a little bit more passes and a little bit more. I won't say beautiful, because many times
it comes back to what you said, which was if you want to generate more set pieces, you have to play more in the opposition third, because they go hand in hand, right?
Yeah, and also because if you want to pass it forward, often if you only use one pass, it'll often be interrupted by a duel, and then you have to be lucky. But is this pass interrupted by the long pass, instead going through 2 or 3 or 4 passes up the pitch with the right movements and the right angles and everything like that? There's a bigger chance that it won't be interrupted, and we actually have the whole team progress forward. So again, it's really hard for me to say. I know he's a quality coach. He's a quality guy too. He's a fantastic guy. So maybe he'll change his strategy a little bit in the future. Yeah.
Interesting. Omid, I've been teasing for all of this entire podcast that you're going to talk about Hincapié. So I'm going to give you the floor. Piero Hincapié, talk about him.
Okay, so if we look at, we spoke midweek on the Arsenal Therapy podcast, hosted by Adam Keys. It's a great one, check it out. That I personally thought that Hincapié should have started in place of Gabriel for multitudes of reasons. I think the majority of the fan base wanted Mosquera to start. Now, I can understand why, because he's come in, 5 minutes at Anfield, he looked very assured, and he's been basically the third choice centre-back. But that's also because Hincapié came in later, he was injured, so you've got to sort of see it for what it is. Hincapié's come in with a bigger sort of reputation. He's more of the ready-made product, if you like, whilst Mosquera was always seen as the project defender. So just from a psychological side, not even looking how similar his style is to Gabriel, it was a no-brainer for me, because on one hand, you could say, oh, in a derby, in a big game, do you want a brand new sort of entrance into the back four? I would actually argue yes, because tactics in a derby are more likely to go out the window than in a normal game. And, a derby's more emotional. And so either way, I thought it's better to have Hincapié. And if you compare this stat, and then the only difference really is, if anything, is the carries, which is actually more from Hincapié. And then we look at this one here between Saliba and Mosquera. They're more like for like. They've always said that Mosquera is more of a baby Saliba. And we can see that on here. So to start Saliba and Mosquera, I don't think Arsenal really had any big opposition strikers to face where it could potentially expose him. And Hincapié's aerial prowess is much greater than Mosquera's at the moment. I think he's a little bit shorter than Mosquera, but Mosquera's still a young boy. He's a bit of a Bambi, if you like. He needs to fill out a little bit. So I thought it was the right idea. You're talking about Hincapié, who's undefeated in the Bundesliga. He's only conceded 5 goals for Ecuador in the South American World Cup qualifiers. And also he's a left footer. So it was just a complete no-brainer for me. I was surprised that Arsenal fans, the vast majority of them, wanted Mosquera. In the comments were like, "Oh, what is Omid on about here?" Thankfully, Arteta went with what I would have done. So, and hopefully we can see more of that in the coming weeks.
Arteta loves, and in cricket you normally have right-handed batters left and left-handed batters. That's the combination. And I think very recently it's become popular in football to have a left-footed centre-back and a right-footed centre-back. But it makes a lot of sense, especially if those centre-backs receive the ball at different types of angles, like you say have with like Saliba and Gabriel, and then in this case Saliba and Hincapié. Also the way Arsenal play, I think you need a left-footed player on that side. All right, for now, we're going to wrap this bit so Omid and Thomas can have a chat about Omid's many questions he's got for you, Thomas. So hopefully you're going to stick around for that. You guys, if you enjoyed this, make sure you let us know in the comments. And any thoughts you've got, let us also know and we'll discuss them on future episodes. But for now, we'll see you on the next one.